There are some things in life that seem ordinary but carry extraordinary power when handled with divine purpose. Salt is not just for seasoning, it's a symbol, a covenant, a weapon in spiritual warfare. When placed with wisdom and intention, it can shift the very atmosphere of your home. Today, I am going to show you 5 sacred places where this small act opens doors for God to move powerfully in your life. Salt. It's one of the most common substances on earth, yet one of the most spiritually significant. In ancient times, salt was not just a seasoning. It was a symbol of preservation, purity, and divine covenant. God himself used salt as a sign of permanence, saying in his word, "It is a covenant of salt forever." That means it's not temporary. It's not optional. It's eternal. So why would something so simple carry such a heavy spiritual weight? Because salt in the hands of the faithful becomes a tool of consecration. It becomes a declaration. It becomes a line drawn in the spirit saying, this house belongs to God. When you understand the covenant of salt, you begin to realize that this isn't superstition. This is spiritual principle. When you place salt with intention, when you pray over it, when you declare the promises of God over it, it becomes sanctified. It becomes an extension of your faith, a visible sign of an invisible truth. The covenant of salt speaks of agreement, a lasting, incorruptible agreement with God. That's why it was used in sacrifices. That's why it was used in offerings, because God wanted his people to remember this isn't just religion. It's relationship. And that relationship comes with power. Power to bind, power to release, power to purify and protect. Salt doesn't just preserve food, it preserves purpose. So when you place that salt in your home, you're not just doing a ritual. You're activating remembrance. You're saying, Lord, I remember your covenant. I remember your word. I remember that you said you would be my shield and my fortress. You're declaring that no corruption, no decay, no spiritual contamination will have access to your space. And once you understand that kind of power, once you grasp that God honors symbols of faith, it makes you ask, where exactly should I begin? If salt is so powerful, where should it go first? What part of my home should be the first place of consecration? Let's start right at the entrance. The doorway of your home is not just wood and hinges. It is a spiritual gate. It is the boundary between what you allow in and what you keep out. Every time someone steps through that threshold, something is either entering your life or exiting it. That's why the entrance is the first place you should place the salt, because it represents authority. It declares who has permission and who does not. When you take salt and place it prayerfully at the doorway, you're not just sprinkling a substance. You're establishing dominion. You're marking that space as a divine boundary line. You're saying only what is sent by God may pass through here. You're releasing a gatekeeping anointing over your home. That threshold becomes a spiritual firewall. No darkness, no curse, no unclean presence has legal right to enter. And remember, salt carries the power of covenant. So when you mix it with prayer and declaration, it speaks. Yes, salt speaks spiritually. It speaks purity. It speaks preservation. It speaks peace. Place your hand over that entryway and say, Lord, let this doorway be guarded by angels. Let every footstep that crosses this line be under your inspection. Let no evil pass this point unnoticed. Your entrance sets the tone for the entire house. Just like a gate sets the tone for a city. If the gate is weak, the enemy enters without resistance. But if the gate is consecrated, if the gate is covered, then everything inside remains protected. Now, here's the mystery. Some of the battles you've been fighting inside your house didn't start inside. They entered through the door. Offenses, curses, heaviness, confusion. They walked in undetected because no one was guarding the threshold. But when you reclaim that gate with salt and prayer, things begin to shift. Peace returns, clarity comes, the atmosphere changes. But don't stop at the door, because while the threshold controls what enters, there's another place in your home that controls what rests, what hides, what lingers in the unseen corners. Let's move now to the foundation. The corners of your home may seem like the most unnoticed spaces, but spiritually they hold weight. They represent the foundation, the framework that supports everything above it. And just like in the natural, when the foundation is compromised, everything else becomes vulnerable. That's why placing salt in the corners is not just symbolic, it's strategic. You're reinforcing the spiritual structure of your home. Every corner, every edge, every hidden place must be claimed for God. Why? Because darkness loves corners. Evil loves what's ignored, what's out of sight, what's left unguarded. If the enemy can't come through the front door, he'll try to creep into the cracks. He looks for the places you overlook, the areas you neglect. But when you take salt and touch every corner with prayer, you are closing every door the enemy could use to sneak in. You are saying this house is not just clean on the surface. It's consecrated at the root. From the ground up, this place belongs to the Lord. Salt in the corners becomes a prophetic act. It's as if you are sealing every boundary with spiritual concrete, making your home a fortress, not just a shelter. And as you do it, speak over it. Speak life. Speak holiness. Walk those corners with authority and say, no residue of darkness can hide here. No curse can rest here. No trauma, no fear. No confusion has legal ground to linger. You're not just cleaning your house. You're cleansing the atmosphere. You're confronting the things that have been crouching in the dark, silently influencing your peace. Many times families deal with cycles of tension, sickness, financial struggle, and they don't know why. But the spirit realm is real, and it's not always what you see. It's what's hiding beneath. But salt, blessed and spoken over, becomes a purging force. It purifies, it resets, it reclaims. So now you've guarded your entrance. You've sealed your foundation. But there's still one place. A place where you lay your head, where battles are fought in silence, where the night reveals what the day hides. Let's talk about the bedroom. The bedroom is supposed to be a place of rest, of intimacy, of peace, but for many it has become a battleground. Night after night, they wrestle with fear, anxiety, tormenting dreams, unexplained heaviness. Why? Because the enemy knows if he can disturb your rest, he can disrupt your purpose. If he can get into your sleep, he can drain your strength before the day even begins. This is why placing salt in the bedroom, especially under the bed or at the corners of the room, is a spiritual act of restoration. You're saying the space will no longer host confusion or fear or torment. It will be a sanctuary for divine rest. Salt doesn't just represent purity. It carries spiritual authority. And when you place it with intention and speak the word over it you are evicting everything that was sent to rob your peace. Nighttime is when the veil between the natural and spiritual realm becomes thinner. It's when the mind is still, but the spirit is active. That's why dreams carry meaning. That's why spiritual attacks often happen in the dark hours. But hear this, your authority does not sleep. Your covering does not expire when the lights go out. You can reclaim the night. You can establish dominion over your rest. Take salt, pray over it, and say, Father, as I place this in my bedroom, let every demonic cycle be broken. Let every dark assignment be canceled. Let angels stand guard while I sleep. Let this room be filled with the peace that surpasses all understanding. Declare that no spirit has permission to cross that boundary. No shadow will linger. No curse will survive the presence of God. And for married couples, the bedroom is also the place of covenant. It's where unity is built. And if there's division, miscommunication, or silent war, salt, prayer, and declaration can bring it. You're not just restoring sleep, you're restoring wholeness. So now you've covered the gate and the ground and the place of rest. But what about the areas connected to flow? The spaces where what's unclean tries to move through undetected? Let's go to the sink. The sink, it's one of the most used yet overlooked places in your entire home. Water flows in and waste flows out. But spiritually, the sink represents more than just a place to wash dishes or hands. Is a gate of flow, a portal of in and out. And wherever there's flow, there's the potential for transfer. That's why the sink must be consecrated, because what comes through it isn't always physical. Sometimes it's spiritual. The Bible tells us that bitter and sweet water should not flow from the same fountain. And the same applies in your house. You can't speak blessings in one room and ignore contamination in another. At sink, the very place where you rinse off the residue of the day must be cleansed spiritually. Why? Because what's rinsed off often carries weight in the spirit. You may not realize it, but negative energy can linger in the most practical places. Arguments in the kitchen, emotional heaviness, old memories. The water goes down the drain, but the residue can remain. But when you place salt around or even in the drain and you pray over it, you're not just cleaning the sink, you're sanctifying the flow. You're saying, Lord, let only what is pure come in. Let only what is unclean go out. Let there be no spiritual residue left behind. Salt in this place becomes a filter. It becomes a purifier. It becomes a spiritual screen that blocks contamination from re-entering. You may think it's just water, but in the realm of the spirit, every system, even plumbing, can become a gateway. Demonic presence doesn't need a grand entrance. It just needs access. But when you block it with faith, prayer, and covenant symbols like salt, that access is denied. Place your hand over that sink and declare, this is not just a utility. This is a channel. And every channel in my house will glorify God. Every floor will be clean. Every exit will be covered. Then watch as even the atmosphere in your kitchen begins to shift. But we're not done yet, because while we've dealt with what flows inside, what about what enters from outside? Let's talk about your windows. Windows, they bring light, they bring air, they bring beauty into the home. But spiritually, they are also entry points. They are watch points, they are gateways. Just like doors, windows represent access. And whatever has access has influence. That's why it's not just the doors you need to cover. It's the windows too. Because what slips through unseen often causes the most damage. You may not realize it, but spirits don't always knock. Sometimes they float. Sometimes they float. They drift. They ride on sound. They move through atmosphere. And if your windows are open spiritually without protection, anything can find its way in. Distraction, confusion, fear, spiritual attacks. That's why salt must be placed near the windows. You're not just decorating, you're defending. You walk to that window and you declare, every point of entry in this house belongs to God. Nothing comes in unless it's sent by Him. Nothing enters unless it carries peace. You are assigning angelic protection. You're putting guards on duty in the spirit realm. You're turning every window into a watchtower where evil is spotted and blessing is welcomed. Because let's be honest, how many times have we opened windows just to let something out and unknowingly let something else in? Spirits of depression, anxiety, restlessness, they don't always kick down the door. Sometimes they just float in quietly through an unguarded crack. But when salt is placed there and the word is spoken, that atmosphere changes. The wind can blow, but it can't bring in torment. The light can shine, but darkness cannot enter. Even in Scripture, the watchman stood at the windows because those who know how the enemy moves know where to guard. This isn't fear. This is wisdom. This is taking spiritual responsibility for the environment you live in. So yes, the windows matter. And when they are covered with prayer and covenant, they become channels of blessing, not burden. They become eyes of the house, seeing only what God allows. Now that you've guarded the entry points, the corners, the rest, and the flow, it's time to go deeper. What about the place that feeds your body and fuels your spirit? Let's go to the pantry. The pantry, it may seem like just a storage place, just a cabinet full of food, but spiritually it represents provision. It's the space that sustains you. And whatever sustains you must be protected, must be sanctified, must be placed under the authority of God. Because if the enemy can't stop your prayers, he'll try to attack your supply. If he can't shake your faith, he'll try to create lack in the place where you depend on God the most. That's why placing salt in the pantry isn't superstition, it's declaration. You're not just protecting your food. You're covering your resource gate. You're saying, God, you are my source, and everything that enters this pantry is blessed by you. Nothing spoiled, nothing cursed, nothing contaminated shall abide here. Salt becomes a prophetic seal over the place where your physical nourishment is stored. Because let's be honest, provision is not just about food, it's about atmosphere. How many times have homes with full shelves still carried a spirit of scarcity? How many people live surrounded by food, yet feel fear that it might not last? That fear isn't natural, it's spiritual. And salt mixed with faith and spoken word breaks that spirit of lack. It tells the enemy, this family shall not fear tomorrow. We shall not beg. We shall not borrow in shame. Our God shall supply. Even in the wilderness, God fed his people. He rained down manna. He caused water to come from a rock. But he also required obedience. He wanted them to remember he was the source, not the supply. And when you place salt in your pantry, when you anoint that space with prayer, you're reminding your household, this comes from the hand of the Lord. And as long as we trust him, there will always be enough. So yes, guard your pantry, bless it, Protect what feeds your family, but don't stop there, because salt doesn't just preserve things. It transforms acts into revelation. There's one last place we need to talk about. The place where your faith becomes a lifestyle, where rituals turn into relationship. Let's talk about the power of spiritual acts. You see, when salt is used with revelation, it becomes more than just a ritual. It becomes a spiritual act. And spiritual acts have power. They carry meaning. They send a message not just to the natural world, but to the invisible realm. The mistake many people make is thinking that what they do in the physical has no consequence in the spiritual. But that is not true. The kingdom of God responds to faith in action. There are moments when God tells us to do something, not because he needs it done, but because we need to see it, touch it, declare it. When you place salt in specific places of your home, you're not just following a pattern. You're walking in obedience. You're saying, God, I believe in your covenant. I believe in your covenant. I trust in your word. And when you obey in the little things, you activate the larger promises. This is the difference between a religious habit and a kingdom principle. Religion performs empty rituals. The kingdom performs with purpose. Salt, when applied without revelation, is just dust. But salt, when applied with understanding, becomes a weapon. It becomes a signal to heaven and a warning to hell. God honors spiritual acts just like he honored the blood on the doorposts in Egypt, just like he honored the rod in Moses' hand, just like he honored the stones David picked up before facing Goliath. He honors obedience that is connected to faith. He honors symbols that are backed by spiritual understanding. So yes, you've placed salt at the doors, the corners, the windows, the pantry, and the sink. You've declared the word. You've reclaimed your space. But now you must live it, because no amount of salt can protect what disobedience continues to invite. No act can substitute for alignment. Let your life, not just your house, reflect the covenant of God. Walk in authority. Speak with boldness. Stand in peace and let your home become a place where angels dwell, where the Spirit of God abides, and where the enemy knows he is not welcome here.